Good morning and welcome to Manage Your Critic live Q&A here Friday just after 8 o'clock in the Facebook group. For those who don't know me, I'm Cheryl Andrews. I'm the founder of Step by Step Listening, and I love inspiring people to listen without judgment. And the reason why I got on this journey is because I was really sensitive to criticism. So today I want to talk about the sensitivity to criticism and where it comes from and what you can do about it. One of the things that if you can learn to listen, the reality is that when someone criticizes us, the truth, the black and white of it is, it's simply their opinion. It's their perspective. If we all sat in a room, a party, we had something in the middle of the room and we all sat around it and we all described it, we would all have a different perception. We'd have a different viewpoint. Our life experiences, our stories, everything about us means that we are all going to have our own individual experience and way of describing any particular thing. We all hear things differently. We all experience things differently. So if we do the five senses, people, so if I say one word, somebody else will see it, someone else will hear it, somebody will feel it. So bearing in mind that every single person has a different experience of things, we can know logically that actually it's just their perception. So today I want to talk about why does it hurt so much? Why does it physically impact us so much? Why does it throw us off track? And what I want to talk, I'm going to take my glass off, I can't see the screen very well. And today what reminded me is I was going back over looking at my marketing strategy and thinking, what can I do to market my book more? And I went back in to look at the reviews on Amazon, and I was looking at my recommendations on LinkedIn, that kind of thing. And I was reading it's called the Top Critical Review on Amazon. If you get a chance to look for Manage Your Critic and go and have a read of it, that'd be great. And I read it, and it was like this wave of emotion came over me. It was like a train had gone through my chest. It was like a really, really strong emotional feeling. And I was a bit surprised actually, because I know that I read the criticism just after the book was launched, just after the first lot of reviews went up there, and it didn't have that impact on me. And so I spent a little bit of time yesterday and a bit of time this morning again, just looking at that and wondering about it and what I know to be true for me, and it may be different for you as well. And I just ask you to be curious about this. Is what I know to be true is if it's more than one thing. So if someone just says I don't like X, Y, and Z, generally speaking, my brain can process it and I go, is there anything else about that? I can stay with that non-judgmental listening. I can be curious. So when I was reading it, I was a bit taken aback at how much I felt this sort of kind of energy inside of me. And I sat and just stopped to have a think about it. And it doesn't surprise me because one of my patterns came up. But so the first thing for me is that there are certain words that will trigger it for me. So there are certain words that will have more of an impact on me than others. There's also the number of words. So in this particular case, I know that for those who've read Facebook, you'll know I had a few tears on Wednesday evening when I'd broken a mirror I'd just bought on Tuesday. And those tears were what I call an irrational response. It was unreasonable, it was unnecessary. And what had actually happened is there'd been a number of things during the week, and this was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. It's the last thing. So I know I'm being unreasonable there, but it's because I haven't processed the other stuff. When I say process, I haven't stopped to allow it to pass through me. It's almost like I've held on to it inside of me. So something has happened that hasn't sat well with me, or I haven't understood, or something's not been right. And instead of having time to think about it and just let it go, I've kind of held on to it, which means I keep that energy inside of me. So when other things come along, it has more of an impact on me. So using the Amazon review as an example, which might help put it into context, is the person put, it's an okay book. And it was something like, it was more of an autobiography than a motivational coaching tool. I nearly gave up reading the story before, I think it was over a third of the way through before you got to the 7 steps. And if you're going to put references, you should put them on the page. So that was the reference. And I was thinking, so I had a look at it, and there was 3 words that stood out, or 3 phrases that got me. It was okay was the first one. It was more of an autobiography, and you should put references at the bottom. And as I read through it, I was able to go, okay, what's the okay? And I could feel the okay. And I was like, that was more of a sort of a personal thing. It was like, okay, well, they think it's okay. And I can choose to go, it's like, well, it's okay. Or I can go, it's okay. So I made a conscious decision to choose to say, it's okay. That I'm going to see it in a more positive light. I'm going to hear that okay, that statement as a positive, but it's an okay book. You know, it's not terrible. It's not horrendous in this person's opinion. But I also know that everybody's definition of okay will be on a sliding scale. So those of you know, Mark and I have a really great relationship, and I will ask him, what did you think of that? And he'll go, oh, it's okay. Or it's all right. And in the end, everything for him has got an okay or an all right. So because I wanted to know a variation, we've started saying, I said, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, is that a 10 okay or a 0 okay? And he'd go, oh, it's a 4 or a 5. So I can get some variation, because he will just use the one word to describe lots of different emotions or feelings or description of his experience. And so what I realised when I sat with that is that okay is very subjective, and I can't speak to this person. And that was part of the challenge. I think the reason why the emotions were so high was because I've realised there is some valuable feedback in this now, but I can't ask the person any more questions. I can't ask them any information about it. And if I do put a comment on Amazon and I question what they mean by it, they will probably think this is a story I'm telling myself anyway, that they'll think I'm trying to justify their feedback, when actually I'm just trying to understand where their okay comes from, what determines okay for them. So what I noticed as I sat with that is that the energy from that okay just started to drift away, because it was like, okay, it is just an okay. More of an autobiography, that was different. That was a bit more like it was like the train. That was the whoosh right in my chest. And I had to sit with that for a while and just let the train go through. My dad was on the platform the other side. And he often, when I was young, when I'd come home excited about a school trip, I'd be talking loads and loads and loads. And he'd go, Cheryl, come up for air, stop. And so it was often that my flow got stopped, my excitement, my passion, because I was talking so fast, and people wanted to understand me, but they couldn't keep up with me. And so the autobiography one is, the reason that one hit me so hard is it's a pattern I've had for a while. When I'm trying really hard to get understood and I'm very excited about something, I often get someone will say, slow down, I can't understand you, and I used to feel like I was doing something wrong. So being me and telling stories really used to, it became a bit, you talk too fast, you don't get to the point, you're justifying, you're doing whatever. People would make statements that were inferring that the way that I was communicating wasn't effective, it wasn't helpful to them. And I remember when I was much younger being really frustrated because I just wanted to tell my story. And it's now that I recognise that actually when people stop me and when people question me and they ask me to slow down, that's actually a really good thing, because they actually want to hear me and they want to understand me. Those who don't stop me and don't question me, maybe they're not trying to digest what I'm saying and they're just allowing me to download, which is sometimes what I need. So it was interesting to watch the train go by, and also to notice that in that particular bit I was able to sit with it. And I remember consciously making a decision with my book. When I originally set out to write the book, I wanted to do like a 1-minute manager book. But when I started the journey, I realised that I really wanted to, the purpose of the book was to connect with my readers, to connect with potential clients, and for people to be able to relate and know that I understood that I'd been on this journey. And so I realised that when I listen to people and when I read books, I like to hear the story. I like to know what it is that got the person to come to their conclusion. So their story matters to me. So I made a conscious decision that I was going to put my story in, and I cut a lot of the story out. And but what I've taken from that feedback, now that the train's passed and I can see my dad there and I can see him wanting to understand me, I'm consciously aware that my style is storytelling and I won't change that. That's who I am. But I can also moderate the stories that I tell and how long those stories are. And so when I write book number 2, and possibly even when I do a second edition of Manager Critic, I may or may not reduce the story down in there. So what would be great for me is those of you who've got my book and have read it, I'd love your feedback, because actually this one person's feedback isn't objective and helpful if I don't see a pattern. So it might be that I could have put the 7 steps first and put the story last. It could be the order I told it could have been changed. So I'm now that the train's passed and the emotions subsided, I can now listen to and be curious about that. I'm really happy with the decision I made for my book to be a story and then the 7 steps for my first book. And now I'm doing my second iteration, my next book, I can start to think about, because there was a need for me to have that story heard, and it was serving my need. I've got 20 reviews and just 2 criticisms, therefore it's actually in context that most people have enjoyed the story. That's what the majority is saying, the story's been helpful. So I won't change it much, but I know for me personally, I want to reduce it. I want to tell less of a story and be able to get there much quicker, she says, after spending how many minutes on her iPhone today talking about stuff. So the third thing that hit me was that you should put references at the below. And that again, it felt like the train whoosh. And when the train passed, there was a teacher on the other side of the platform wagging their finger, basically telling me I'm going to fail if I don't get it right, that I've done something wrong. And that real sense of fear of not belonging. Once the train passed, and I was able to just sit with the emotion, and I could see that the teacher was wanting to guide me, wanting to advise me. And I also remember that I did consciously decide not to put references at the footnotes in the pages, because when I'm reading a book, I find it distracts me. I mean, if I'm reading a sentence and there's a little note 1 here, I go down to read the footnote and then it loses my flow, and I hate that in a book. So I had made a conscious decision that I didn't want footnotes at the bottom. However, now I've had time to sit with it and reflect on it, I recognise that I just put a summary of all the books and all the references I'd use at the back. And what I could have done, and I will do for my next book, is put the pages when this book has been referenced in the main context, so that if anybody's looking for something, they can go and have a look down and see which pages, which book is being used on those pages. So it can make the referencing easier for people if they want to look things up and to want to question it or challenge it. But what's really interesting for me is that the last time I read it, I didn't have any of this emotion. And what I'd actually done is I knew that I was preparing myself when I first put my book out there and I first asked people to do reviews. I was like preparing myself for criticism. And so what I actually had done is not listen to it at all. I just filtered it. I just blocked it. I just thought, oh, well, it's just one person doesn't like it. I'm not going to listen to it. And that's one of the downsides. If you're not good at managing your criticism, you're not good at managing your own state when people criticise you, or you're not even consciously aware of you criticising yourself, you can't process the feedback, and therefore you don't get the growth, you don't get the learning. And what's lovely for me is, because a lot of my work with clients is about clarity, it's about making a decision and then having confidence in that decision. Now that I've sat with it, I can remember consciously deciding at those key points. There's not much I can do about an okay book, because I don't actually know what okay means to that person. But what I can do is, I just realised actually I said that out loud, I can check with myself that is it okay by me? And I think it's an okay book too. Do I think it could be better? Yes. But could it have been better before I published it? No, because I had to publish it. I had to give it out. I had to have people read it. I had to have feedback. Does it really support me and my clients? Absolutely. If when I use the book with my clients, it's just quick, easy references. Say, read this chapter before we speak next. And it's really helps us to do work much faster, much quicker. It's helped loads of people who would perhaps never have contacted me, who'd never got in touch with me. So as I do my storytelling, as I'm telling you that about now, I'm actually processing it. I hadn't really thought about that before. But actually, it's more than okay. By my standards, by my definition, and based on the feedback that I've had from people and the other reviews. So today I've got two questions, well, one question and a request. So the question is, feedback and criticism for you is like what? So I talked to you today about how it's like a train. It's like whoosh, it's like come through me. It's a bit like a Harry Potter moment going through the 9 3/4 wall. The train went through me, and it's like a real rush of energy. And if I don't stop and just allow it to be, it can get stuck inside me. So then I get chest pains, then I get a cough, and then I get sore throats. So it's like if I don't let that go through, it just stays there. The energy stays there. So that's what it's like for me. I'd love to know for you, when you get criticised, or that's like what for you? What's your experience of it? And the other thing is, if you have read the book and you haven't yet done so, please go to Amazon and leave me a review. And if you've got criticism on that review, I'm really happy for you to put it in there. I love it. It helps me grow. And let me know if you're happy for me to ask questions. If something you say about the book doesn't make sense to me, and I can't ask you questions about what you mean by what you say, then I can't develop it. It's like the criticism you're giving me is pointless. It's just your personal opinion, and it's just allowing you to feel better because you've told me what you do or don't like. If you can allow me to ask you questions about your criticism, then I can bridge the gap between what I intended the book to do versus what your experience of it is, and then I can look to make a decision whether or not I want to change my style, whether I want to add on it and develop it and grow it as I write book number 2. So hopefully that's useful. If you want to do more of what you love and ditch the critic that says you can't, then the number one thing you do need to do is have clarity of what you want, confidence in your decisions, and change the way that you respond to criticism. So lots of love. I'm now off for the day. I'm going for a lovely bike ride with Mark to celebrate his 50th birthday. Request number 3. If you get as far as this and you know Mark, please go to his page and wish him happy birthday. I'm a words person, he's a numbers person, and he will count how many people commented on his page at the end of today, and it does make a difference to him. He won't say that out loud, but it does make a difference to him. So if you have a moment today, he's 50 years old, he's my soulmate, my best friend, and my super rock, and I'd love for him to feel ecstatic today. I'd love him to get the feedback from you that he matters and that he makes a difference in your life and mine. So please go and wish him happy birthday, and I will speak to you soon.